Hello, and welcome to my channel, Skepticus. This is the first in a series that I am calling God's Troll Army. I have just recently launched the channel. It's going about as you would expect from newly launched channels. There are some views, there are some subscribers. I didn't think I'd really be doing any kind of reaction videos to any comments for quite a while because, it just kind of takes a little while to build up some momentum. But you know what? You guys have come through. So there's enough material here that we are going to launch into our first episode of God's Troll Army, where we will be recruiting and promoting people into God's Troll Army. So let's go ahead and get started. The first comment that I have to read came in on my video, Fear or Faith, debunking the fear of God myth. This comes from Christ is in our midst. Good evening, Adam. I hope your day is going well. It's nice that he's congenial. I'd like to briefly comment on what you said about the book of Job. Job says it himself. The Lord has given and the Lord has taken away. Right away, you have to wonder where this is going, because anytime we're quoting the Lord has given and the Lord has taken away, it sounds like we're making excuses for the fact that the Lord's taken away. But we'll see where this goes. It seems inappropriate to consider God, who created all things visible and invisible ex nihilo, and who is at this very moment sustaining our lives, as an ass. I don't have a transcript of that video. Apparently, I called God an ass in that video. I mean, it's happened on multiple videos already. I'm sure it's going to happen again. But yes, I'm sure I called God an ass. But I guess that's not cool, because God has created all things visible and invisible ex nihilo, and who is at this very moment sustaining our lives. It makes me sound like I'm on life support, like beep, beep, beep. But okay, I guess I shouldn't call God an ass. God gave us life and basically everything else under the condition that these are temporary gifts. If you buy someone a ticket to a movie, for example, it would be ridiculous and even prideful for them to get mad at you because the movie ended. Yes, that is true, but it would also be ridiculous if you bought someone a movie ticket and then you demanded worship from them afterwards. So I don't know if that analogy really holds up. This relates to the idea of fear of God, the humbling recognition that God is the source of all we have. Okay, obviously that's not my position, but continue. Every second of life we have and every other gift God gives us, even if temporary, according to the Christian perspective, is a testament to God's love. Furthermore, the idea that God, wait a minute, I have to bring up here. It says, every second of life we have is a testament to God's love. Now, you could be living a wonderful life. You could be happy. You could be secure. You could have all this. You could also be living in abject misery. And I know the argument that we'll get is that, it's better than being dead, and this is God's gift to you. But the idea that everybody in every phase of life, in every condition that they may be in, no matter what their status, that they should all just be prostrating themselves to sing God's praises, is what I absolutely reject out of Christian crap. But I understand this is Christ in our midst perspective. I mean, if your username is Christ in our midst, I don't think you're going to be agreeing with many of my points, so c'est la vie. Furthermore, the idea that God sought to prove a point to Satan seems to me like a misrepresentation of what the text is saying, but perhaps you can show me otherwise. How did you arrive at this interpretation? Wait, what? He says, again, furthermore, the idea that God sought to prove a point to Satan seems to me like a misrepresentation of what the text is saying, but perhaps you can show me otherwise. Now, at a certain point, all I can say is read the text. You either understand what a text says or you don't, and you either understand it the way I do or you don't. I mean, everyone brings their own interpretation to the text. That is unavoidable. We all have our own way of reading any text. We cannot approach any text without bias. But this is not just some crazy idea that I pulled out of my backside about Job. Ask anyone who's truly read Job, and preferably someone who's read the Bible, what is Job about? And they'll tell you it's Satan making a bet with God. It opens up with Satan talking to God. Now, to be fair, in the most modern translations that I've seen, it just says the accuser with a small a, and there's debate there as to whether or not that is the capital S Satan that we think of in Christian terms, or whether that is an accuser. But I don't think he's making that point here. He's really going more for the deeper point of just the idea that God sought to prove a point to Satan seems like a misrepresentation of what the text is saying. But the text opens with God saying, look at how cool Job is. He loves me. And Satan is saying, nah, man, he loves you because you showered him with all this stuff. If you take away all these blessings, then he will curse you. And God, rather than saying, dude, this is not your place, or rather than saying, Satan, why are you here in my house? No, instead, God says, bet. God says, I'll show you. And God then proceeds to strip Job of all his blessings. And of course, if you've read the book, you know that when I say blessings, I don't mean like, a sunny day or a tasty dessert. I mean that he stripped him of everything, his health, his wealth, his happiness, and yes, his family. He killed Job. To be fair, let me rephrase this. God did not do these things. But God was absolutely responsible for these things. God said to Satan, you do with him these things. God gave Satan the reins and said, you do these things. And then Satan proceeded to take his health, his wealth, his happiness, his family, all of these things. And you can say, well, that was Satan, that wasn't God. But this was God explicitly allowing Satan to do these things. And why? To prove a point. And if that doesn't sound sick to you, then I don't know what more I can tell you. I mean, this is a lot of what I try to get to in this channel, is that Christians will read the most disgusting stuff and still try to God-splain it with their rose-colored glasses and say, oh no, I don't know where you get that. How did I arrive at this interpretation? I read the text. He continues, the only case one could attempt to make against God in Job, is that perhaps, even if it weren't wrongful of God, it wasn't perfectly loving, since we as Christians consider God to be perfectly loving. Okay, no one who's actually read all of the Bible considers him to be, but I do understand that most modern day Christians have this idea of God as perfectly loving. But if you've read it from the first page of the Old Testament to the last page of the New Testament, and you haven't done it with all of your God-splaining glasses on, there's no way you believe it to be him to be all loving. But fine, I get it. That is the ethos that we're talking about here. So again, he says the only case one could attempt to make against God in Job is that perhaps, even if it weren't wrongful of God, it wasn't perfectly loving, since we as Christians consider God to be perfectly loving. However, to argue that God could have been more loving necessitates that you know everything about the situation present in Job, which isn't the case. Wishing you the best. He gives a false dichotomy at the end here, basically saying, well, the only thing that we can say is that maybe, that he could have been more loving. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. God, in the story of Job, was disgusting. I'm not saying anything about, maybe he could have been more loving. And even in that case, he pulls up a standard Christian bromide, which is to say, well, this necessitates that you know everything about the situation present in Job, which isn't the case. Well, if that's the case, we can't comment on literally any book of the Bible or any verse in the Bible whatsoever. Because at no point when you read the Bible do you know everything about the situation. So if we're going to make that case, then just stop having any conversations about the Bible whatsoever, because you can pull that bromide out for literally any book, any chapter, any verse of the Bible, that we do not know everything about the situation present. But what we do know is what's in the text. And if Christians are going to throw the text at us, then I am more than happy to take what's in the text and read it on face value and take it as it is. Take the text on its own terms. Don't put on your God glasses and God-splain it away. No, read the text in its own terms. In Job, God absolutely hands the reins to Satan to prove some kind of metaphysical, spiritual, religious point. And in turn, Satan proceeds to ruin Job's life, including, up to and including killing his family. Now, he gets it back in the end. I'm sorry, that's not an excuse. Saying I let Satan wipe out everything to prove some point, and then I got it all back for you in the end, which, by the way, getting it all back in the end really doesn't totally apply, because he had to get a new family, because of course the old family was dead. Yeah. So if you can't see the problem in that story, that's disgusting. Now, I have read, when I first read Job when I was small, I didn't read it like as part of reading the Bible from front to back. Someone had told me that Job was in the Bible, and I was like, what? No, that's not in the Bible. And then I went and read it, and I was like, this is disgusting. I couldn't believe that this was even in the Bible. And I couldn't, for the life of me, even figure out why someone would allow that in their Bible. This was before I read the whole Bible, of course. Since that time, I have learned that many people try to paint this as a lesson in why do bad things happen to good people, and in always, being true to God no matter what happens. But I'm sorry, that's still sick. The message here is sick. The way that they go about it is sick. And I'm sorry, I can't abide by any of Christ's is in our midst answer. Now, to be fair, I can't recruit Christ is in our midst for God's troll army, because he was very polite, and he seemed to present his case in a respectful way, although I find his points to be revolting. But I don't think we're ever going to agree on that. There's also another long thread where a whole bunch of people were going back and forth, and he's very polite. So I definitely cannot try to recruit him into God's troll army. And I do appreciate his reply, even though I find it to be logically baffling. But hey, c'est la vie. Moving on to the next question. Once again, this is on Fear or Faith. And I don't know how you pronounce his username, Mabetep something. It says, atheist perspective can't provide answers. In atheist view itself, all the information is just a white noise. That only appears to be structured for the time being. Wow. Okay. That doesn't even make any sense. Atheist perspective can't provide answers. First of all, I'm not trying to provide answers, and neither is any atheist that I know of. Christians try to provide answers for everything, although the answers usually boil down to because God did it. Usually the answers are intellectually bankrupt. But Christians do, and most religions do try to provide answers. Atheism is not about answering your questions. If you really need things answered, research, do science, look at science, or do your own science, or figure out what the prevailing wisdom is, the consensus of scholars and other learned minds on these topics. Atheism is not here to answer these questions. Atheism just means, I don't think there's a God there. That's all it means. And if you think that you can trump card me because, you don't provide answers, congratulations. I don't make stuff up out of my ass with a bunch of imaginary gods and curses and demigods and angels and all this other stuff just to try to explain the things that I can comfortably tell you I don't know. So the idea that the atheist perspective can't provide answers is a complete non sequitur. Who cares? I mean, go figure out a better place to find answers, because if you think you're going to get them from atheists, I will tell you, no, atheists are not going to give you answers. I do think that part of what you're trying to allude to here is atheists in general have a reputation for being more rationally and skeptically and scientifically minded, so they are probably more equipped to tell you what the prevailing scientific ideas are of the day rather than your average Christian. But that doesn't mean that any particular atheist is any more knowledgeable on any particular subject than any person off the street. And of course, just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're even that smart or have any rational answers at all. I mean, there are flat earthers who are atheists. So this idea that the atheist perspective can't provide answers is pointless, and it does you nothing at all. This is an atheist view itself. All the information is just a white noise. I don't even know what that means. All the information is just a white noise. Okay. Sure. That only appears to be structured for the time being. I mean, if we really wanted to get into some esoteric theory here, I mean, yes, if you get down to a quantum level or an atomic level, then yeah, everything does only appear to be structured for the time being, but I don't even think that's where you're going. In fact, I can't figure out exactly where you are going. I just replied, LOL. He replied, that's an interesting way to engage. My opinion is still uncontested. Dude, I don't care. I'm not going to sit here and try to go point for point with you on an illogical initial question, even though you tried to brush it off with laughter. No purpose of life means there is no difference between sentient and not living matter. That sentence does not follow at all. It makes no sense. Therefore, even your attempt into philosophy brings no value into universe. Okay, but his commentary here is clearly bringing deep value into the universe. Your perceived comfort or torture in your thoughts and answers shouldn't matter for the heat death of the universe. Again, where is any of this coming from? You can laugh at that and stay on the surface of ignorance instead of trying to see where a thought of atheism would bring you in the darkness of deep waters. We should take that piece right there and chant that while we have candles and doing some kind of occult thing, stay on the surface of ignorance instead of trying to see where a thought of atheism would bring you in the darkness of deep waters. So I responded, I'm honored to have the sole arbiter of what is or is not contested commenting on my video. Thank you. He says, first, you dismissed a point. Then you dismissed a person making a point, calling him names. There is nowhere in my scant reply that I called him any name whatsoever. Interesting. Very interesting way to engage. And my only response was, you're reaching God tier, because there is no point in engaging in him. If I didn't think it would be entertaining to pull this up on the video, I wouldn't have even bothered with that. But you, Mobitep, are absolutely recruited into God's troll army. In fact, I think he has earned an officer's commission. So congratulations, you are now a member of God's troll army. Onto a comment that I received on my video, Why Christian Apologetics is Intellectual Surrender. Elwood Bromfeld writes, you are lying to claim apologetics, philosophy, and science is intellectual surrender. Debate me and you will get your atheist ass handed to you on the intellectual merits. You are lying to claim apologetics, and then he puts in parentheses, philosophy and science is intellectual surrender. Is he trying to imply that philosophy and science are somehow part of apologetics? That makes no sense. Or is he saying that I am claiming that only apologetics in relation to philosophy and science or intellectual surrender, which is not what I was saying in the video at all. I don't know if he knows what he's saying. You are trying to claim apologetics, philosophy and science. Apologetics has nothing to... Apologetics is the antithesis of science. Apologists take a conclusion that they feel they need to defend because of dogma and doctrine, and then they work backwards from that conclusion. They do everything that they can to try to find any way that that conclusion is somehow excusable in their worldview. But they will not use a scientific approach to try to eliminate any of their presupposed conclusions, because they have nothing to do with science. So the fact that it says you are lying to claim apologetics, philosophy and science is intellectual surrender. He doesn't apparently know what the word apologetics even means. And then he says, debate me and you will get your atheist ass handed to you on the intellectual merits. I don't know if he thought I was going to debate him in the comments. The only thing I said was epic reply, you're awesome. But I don't know if he thought I was going to debate him in the comments. Others jumped in, and good on them. I had other videos to make. If he's actually so arrogant as to think I would have him on my channel, this dude who has no YouTube channel of his own and no audience, and I have no reason to believe he even understands the content of the first video, like I'm going to invite him on my channel to debate. No. And yes, I'm sure that's because I'm so afraid that my atheist ass will be handed to me on the intellectual merits. Oh yeah, Elwood Bromfield is absolutely in God's troll army. Congratulations. Another comment on my Fear or Faith video came from Phineas. It's just a quote from the Bible, because that's what you should always put on an atheist video. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The Bible. Apparently they don't know actually where that comes from in the Bible, and I'm not even going to mention it here because it's very, very easy to Google, but they just want us to know that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The Bible. As though the Bible left the comment, or the Bible is speaking to me, I guess. To be fair, this isn't a horribly rude or snarky comment, although it's absolutely pointless. Like, yay. After I've gone through and explained how ridiculous this whole idea of the fear of God is, and in the video I actually absolutely referenced this quote that they're talking about, where the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Their whole reply is, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The Bible. I'm sorry, Phineas, I can't actually offer you a slot in God's troll army for this, although you're absolutely qualified for the support team. So if we need logistics or, just someone to make the troops happy on any given night, you could absolutely qualify. On my Christian Apologetics is Intellectual Surrender video, Smadaf says more than 90 seconds to get started, starting off by telling us we're so lucky to watch your video. This is not trolling at all. I just want to state this in my video here that despite my snarky at times attitude, this is absolutely a valid piece of feedback. I did reply. I said, I don't disagree. I am learning. There will be some more videos coming up on the channel that have intros that are too long because they were already recorded and I wasn't going to go back and re-edit them or re-record them or re-upload them. But I am trying to make my intros more pithy. So thank you for that feedback, Smadaf. You're definitely not part of God's troll army. On that same video, Gavin Bobish 8999 says, regrettably, this is a self-gratification. Any X group can be put in the place of the stupid, depending on the reader. There is no point in trying to distinguish the stupid from the malicious, because the very nature of writing off evidence as inconsequential is malicious. Arguing with the stupid any X group is pointless at the point when they become malicious in their beliefs, because of the chess with a pigeon comparison. Anyone can shut on the board and act like they won at any time for any beliefs, which means that the categorization of these people among all groups should only be malicious. I don't disagree with this comment, and this is definitely not a trolling comment. I will say that part of the reason why I made the video was because I see this behavior far more often in the group of religion and specifically Christian apologists than I do in other groups. I mean, there are atheists, for example, who will say stupid, malicious stuff and will just not argue in good faith. But I find it far more common that Christians just get defensive and they just want to hold blindly to any belief that they were taught in Bible school when they were 5 rather than think of anything critically. Is that fair? I don't know. You can be the judge. But definitely not malicious. You're definitely not part of God's troll army. Gavin Babish 8999. Okay, on my most recent video, as of the recording of this, the Bible, claimed, quoted, but never read, Scott Gadboy 4669 says, the amount of people who could read and comprehend the entire Bible is 0. It is a collection of many books written over thousands of years, with more connections from one passage to any other than any other written work. So, first of all, you gotta love that Christian condescension, don't you? That there is no one, the number of people is 0 who could read and comprehend the entire Bible. It is incomprehensible. I mean, it's fine to sit there and be fluffer for your God. But this kind of claptrap is really the kind of stuff that just allows Christians to never have to be intellectually honest with anyone. Here's why. Because once you take that position, then you have essentially pre-eliminated any complaint that anyone could have around the Bible, because you can't possibly comprehend it. It's just too great, too enlightened, too godly for you to possibly comprehend the entire Bible. I mean, we have people who have figured out quantum mechanics and special relativity and how to get a man on the moon, but nobody could ever possibly comprehend the entire Bible. Okay, dude. And then here he dives into what is, I've noticed, is a really common it's like a meme or a trope. It seems to be gaining ground lately with Christianity and on the YouTubes and the TikToks and everything. But he pulls up this crap where it says, with more connections from one passage to any other than any other written work. That is complete conjecture. That is someone laying their dogma and their whole theory of Bible on top of something and seeing something that cannot and will not be proven. What this is somebody sat down, I don't even know who it is, I don't even care to look it up. They tried to say, oh, this verse connects to that verse and, to completely different books. And this is all connected and this is a reference to that and that's a reference to that. And they have come up with, even with this pretty looking graph where it shows all these lines that are supposed to represent all the thousands of connections that are in the Bible that we can't possibly comprehend, although apparently the person who came up with this graph comprehended it. But they will try to say that there's all these magical references, how the Bible is perfectly coherent with itself. But the problem is that none of this is verifiable. And when you look at these connections that they talk about, the vast majority of them are patently ridiculous. It is that, oh, Jonah was in the whale for 3 days and Jesus was resurrected after 3 days, and that's a connection. It's a number. There are 3 bears with Goldilocks. That doesn't mean that the 3 bears in Goldilocks are connected to the 3 days where Jesus had to wait to be resurrected. No. It's a number. In fact, 3 is the most commonly used number in any kind of storytelling. There's a whole little psychology behind it I won't bore you with. And that's not the only connection, but the point is that they do this over and over and over again. And like, oh my gosh, look at that. That is a connection to this. But when you read both of the verses, especially when you read them both in context and you read the whole damn thing and you don't just pick out this verse and that verse and then you don't try to make some magical God-splaining connection with it, you realize that at best these things are a coincidence, and at worst most of the time they are not anything that anything other than a hardcore apologist would claim is a connection. They are literally paraphenia, or I forget, it's where you're seeing patterns that don't exist. That is what is happening here. And in this case, it's even worse because they are trying to find the patterns. They are looking for that deep spiritual meaning. And oh my gosh, look at that. There's 3 there and there's 3 there. And there's this many letters in his name and that many letters in his name. That's a connection. And it just becomes truly reading the tea leaves. But Scott Gadboy goes on, if you are truly a follower of Yahshua, you don't say, I've read the Bible. You say, I read the Bible every day and try to learn from it every day. I pray it brings me closer to my Savior every day. I'm assuming from that use of Yahshua that he is Jewish, Hebrew of some sort, although I don't know and don't care, but that's one of the names that Jews use for Jesus. But it says, you don't say, I've read the Bible. You say, I read the Bible every day. And see, I love how he's basically proving my point here, though. It's fine to sit down and read the Bible every day. Sit down, read a verse, read a chapter, pray on it, meditate on it, figure out what lessons you can extract from it. That's fine. I'm fine with all that. But if it's never supplemented by just reading the damn Bible, then you don't really understand the Bible. You can sit there and read from the Bible every day, which usually implies that you either followed some study plan where it told you now go to this chapter and this verse, and then later go to this chapter and this verse. Or for some people, it means they literally randomly open the book and read something there. Or they use some other method to try to figure out what they're reading every day, but it almost never means, when someone says, I haven't read the Bible, but I read the Bible every day, as Scott tells us we should say. Well, when someone says that, it almost always means that they've never read the whole Bible. It means that, yes, they sat down and read this verse and that verse and that verse. And it's a lot of times there are even verses that are recommended from other people, which doesn't sound like a bad thing, but it means that the recommendations aren't telling you to read all the problematic verses. They're not telling you to understand the whole text of how this one little verse that sounds wonderful when you pluck it out actually is kind of weird when you read the whole full thing in context. So if you're just sitting there and all you do is read a few verses every day and meditate on them or whatever, it's not that that's a bad thing, but it means that you absolutely do not have a proper understanding of the book as a whole. And you have that same God-splaining warped perspective on the Bible and Christianity. I will say that Scott doesn't necessarily qualify for God's troll army. I think that his comment, unfortunately, really misses the whole point. But I can't call that part of God's troll army. The next comment is from my video, When Prayer Fails, It's Your Fault, apparently. And the comment is from CJF Carlson, who says, no problem to identify why you were thrown out of Christianity. What? When did this happen? I didn't get the note. According to CJF Carlson, I was thrown out of Christianity. I've done another video that isn't even live at this point, but where I talked about the fact that there is not a single human on earth that has the authority to throw you out of Christianity. But that's another point. Okay, but even if we assume that Carlson's reference is to a church or denomination, I've never been thrown out of Christianity. I left. And given my public persona now with these videos, there's probably a lot of Christians who wouldn't even want me back, even if I tried to come back. But where do you get this? No problem to identify why you were thrown out of Christianity. Okay, I guess you've decided now that I was thrown out of Christianity despite a complete lack of evidence to support that. But sure. You are a magic believer and are talking about why your spells do not succeed all the time. Yes, the Skepticus, the channel for skeptical thought and atheism, and I am a magic believer. Yeah, I need a wand and a sorting hat. Yeah, that's great. I have been thrown out of Christianity unbeknownst to me. I mean, did they send you a letter to the house? Do you get an email? Maybe like a notice on your phone? Because wherever they send you the notice, I didn't get it. Like, God, do you want to like speak up on this? I didn't get the notice. I'm not sure what happened. Then again, I guess, you know, if you're kicked out, maybe it's one of those things where they just changed the locks. Maybe if I go to church next week, I'll try to get in, and they'll be just standing there looking at me like, no, you ain't getting in. It ain't gonna happen. So I guess I've been kicked out of Christianity, maybe because I'm supposedly a magic believer. Hocus pocus. He says, it is not rocket science figuring out how many of your spells need to be answered before you are the one all-powerful. Ponder that for a moment. That last part, I love when people get all these talk utter bullshit, but then they got to throw in something deep, like ponder that for a moment. Like I was going to sit here after this paragraph and then go, oh, yes. C.J.F. Carlson has an excellent point. Maybe if I hadn't been kicked out of Christianity, unbeknownst to me, maybe if I wasn't a magic believer, let me ponder that. I'm going to need more beard to do more pondering. I better grow this out. I need a pondering beard, you know? Get like full ponder mode. I wonder if that would make C.J.F. Carlson happy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can feel the ponder coming on now. Can you feel it? Oh, yeah. Just go ahead. If you are a beard-endowed individual, join me. Can you feel that ponder? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's so much pondering going on. Ponder that for a moment. Do you think he typed that, hit enter, and then did a flourish as he walked away from his desk or from his phone? Like, ha ha! Ponder that for a moment. Adam of Noah. I bet C.J.F. Carlson has a cape. I hope he does. C.J.F. Carlson, you are absolutely in God's troll army. You have been recruited. You are listed. I can't wait to see you fighting on the front lines. Okay, and our last comment for today on God's troll army comes from my video, The Bible, claimed, quoted, but never read. This is from The Tornado Crusader 968. All right. It says, first point, even atheists may read the Bible, but it doesn't mean they understand it. But the most important part is the gospel and how to be saved, which is to have faith in Jesus to be saved. Once again, we see this kind of arrogance, you know. Even atheists may read the Bible, but it doesn't mean they understand it. Yeah, that can be said of any human. Any human could read the Bible. That doesn't mean they understand it. But are you then taking the assumption then that I'm not understanding it because I'm an atheist? I mean, I was a Christian, but I know that where this question's going, they probably don't think I ever was. Because for so many Christians, the idea that you used to be a Christian is mind-blowing to them. They can't even conceive of it. So I was a Christian. I have read the Bible numerous times. I am reading it as part of my series, God-Free Bible Study. But that doesn't mean I understand it, which is true. It doesn't mean I understand it. Also doesn't mean that Christians understand it. Doesn't mean that anyone understands it. But I do have faith in people with modest intellect who actually decide, I want to read the Bible, and not because my pastor told me, not because I want to find excuses for my faith, but just because I want to read it to see what it says. I have faith, yes, I'm saying faith, that even people of moderate intellect can, in fact, understand it. It's not rocket science. But the most important part is the gospel and how to be saved, which is to have faith in Jesus to be saved. Obviously, for the Christian faith, the gospel is important. Newsflash, there's some problematic shit in the gospels too. But I will admit that if we just take the gospels, which is not even the New Testament, which, I mean, if I'm to take this reply literally, the gospel, then that is just a small portion of the New Testament. And I will admit that if that's all you read, it is probably the least problematic way to read the Bible. To be clear, again, it doesn't mean it's not problematic. I'm just saying that it is the least problematic way that you could read the Bible. In terms of having to deal with weird, nasty, immoral content. It's one of the most problematic ways to read the Bible if you want to read just the Gospels and then assume that is Christianity, because that's just dishonest. It's intellectually and morally dishonest. There is not a God of the Old Testament and a God of the New Testament. First of all, according to the Trinity, Jesus and God is like all kind of same thing somehow, right? So that was Jesus giving those crappy commands all through the Old Testament. And even if we take away the Trinity for a moment, the fact is that Jesus said specifically that you were to keep all the laws from the Old Testament. So don't, you can sit there and say, oh, but it's just the Gospels, and that's fine. But it's also dangerously myopic, and it paints an unfair, rosy picture of your religion, because you're just taking a scalpel to the pieces that you like the most and saying, no, it's the Gospels about being saved by Jesus. And it says, then comes baptism, and if you love Jesus, you will follow his commandments. Yeah, I don't. Now, if we're talking about fiction, that about the atheist miracle of something coming from nothing, the universe making itself. So, okay, so let's talk about fiction. Atheists think the universe came from nothing. Okay, thank you for that false statement. There are some atheists that believe the universe came from nothing. There are some atheists that believe it came from other means. There are some atheists like myself who have no problem just saying, I don't know. And that's okay. So there, your straw man about, we'll talk about fiction. It's the atheist miracle of something coming from nothing. You are creating a straw man as a means of trying to knock down atheism. Fine, but it's really lame and it's really tired and it's been done over and over again and it serves no rhetorical purpose. The universe making itself. And a lot of atheists aren't consistent with morals, since if there is no God, there is no objective morality. Oh my gosh. So whenever an atheist claims to say something is absolutely wrong, no matter what, according to their worldview, that would be impossible. No, you obviously understand absolutely nothing about atheism or morality. If you believe that you can have no morals without morality or without God, then you don't understand anything about it at all. Now, you say objective morality. There are some atheists who believe that there is objective morality, some atheists who don't. Again, you seem to know nothing about atheism whatsoever, and yet you have no problem spewing BS in the comments. Good for you. And about today being a religion saturated society. I'm trying to read through. Should say really quickly, I don't want to give anyone crap for having spelling errors and stuff. I get it. You're typing on your phones or whatever. I'm going to try to be as give you as much grace as I can with that. And about today being a religion-saturated society, what about Hollywood mocking Jesus, or France, oh my gosh, or France mocking the Last Supper? There are Christians going to jail after praying for things in the West. Where are Christians going to jail after praying for things in the West? Please show me, because you can't. There is no place where Christians went to jail because they prayed for things in the West. And I don't know if you mean that they went to jail in the West for praying for things, or they were praying for something to happen in the West. But either way, your sentence makes no sense whatsoever. And, how is Hollywood mocking Jesus? Hollywood as a whole doesn't mock Jesus. Hollywood has free speech. They are artistic. They absolutely can say things that are anti-Jesus if they wish. They can make pieces of art that are anti-Jesus if they wish. The whole idea that Hollywood is just mocking Jesus and France is just mocking Jesus and it's all anti-Jesus just plays into the same tired persecution complex that we see from Christians over and over and over again. Oh, woe is them. Even though they are the most populist religion in the entire freaking world, according to them, the entire world is just against them and persecuting them at all times. I would not say that this society is religiously saturated, at least with Christianity. It seems almost like the society hates Christianity. Yes, I'm sure it does when you are steeped in your own persecution complex. Of course it does. Because every time you have to see a gay person walking down the street, it's about Christianity, or it's about this nation hating Christians. And anytime there is any Hollywood star who even mentions in some interview that they're an atheist or that they don't like Jesus or whatever, that is Hollywood mocking Jesus. And according to you, I guess the entire freaking country of France mocks Jesus because of something with the Last Supper. Come on. I mean, how sad do you have to be to really crawl into this abused woe is me bubble of everyone's against Christianity? I mean, I don't know exactly where if they're in France or what, because I think when they say the West, they might be referring to like the US as part of the West. But even in Europe, where religiosity has dwindled a lot in the last 50 to 100 years, it's still ridiculous to claim that Christians are persecuted on any level in Europe. And in America, it's downright silly. I mean, if you think that Christians are persecuted here, it's because you're in a ridiculous apologetic, because you think that the whole world is out to get you. And even though you are the privileged majority and your group has all of the levers of power, oh my gosh, because you can find one headline on OAN or Newsmax that says Christians weren't treated well, you think that Christianity is persecuted and everyone hates you. Congratulations, the Tornado Crusader 968. You have absolutely made your enlistment into God's troll army. Thank you for joining us. I hope to see all of you, or most of you at least, in future videos. If I don't, or if I do, until the next time, please stay skeptical.